Rain hammered the windows of the small roadside diner, turning the neon lights outside into blurred streaks of red and blue. Inside, Elara moved quietly between tables, balancing plates with practiced ease. At 20, she had already learned how to become invisible, how to keep her head down, avoid trouble, and survive another long night shift. The bell above the door suddenly rang, sharp and heavy, cutting through the low hum of conversation. Everyone felt it before they saw him. The man who entered carried a presence that silenced the room. Dressed in a dark coat, eyes cold and unreadable, he didn't need an introduction. The whispers started instantly. People looked away, pretending not to notice, but fear hung thick in the air. Even the staff hesitated. But Elara didn't have that luxury. She picked up a menu and walked toward his table, her heartbeat quickening with every step. When she reached him, something strange happened. As she placed the menu down, her fingers tapped lightly against the table, once, twice, then a pause, followed by 3 quick taps. It was subtle, almost accidental to anyone watching. But it wasn't. The man's eyes snapped up to meet hers. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. His expression shifted, just slightly, but enough to reveal recognition and shock. Elara said nothing, her face calm, as if she had done nothing unusual. But beneath that calm, her pulse raced. Around them, life resumed, unaware that something dangerous had just been set in motion. The ride was silent, the kind of silence that pressed against the chest. Elara sat in the back seat of a black car, rain still tracing lines across the windows as the city lights faded behind them. No one spoke to her, and she didn't ask questions. She understood enough already. She had crossed the line the moment she made that signal. When they finally arrived, the gates opened without hesitation. Inside stood a massive estate, guarded and isolated from the outside world. Elara was escorted through long corridors until she reached a dimly lit room. He was already there, standing near a window, his back turned. "You shouldn't know that code," he said without looking at her. Elara took a slow breath. "My father did." That was enough to change everything. The man turned, his sharp gaze now filled with something deeper than suspicion, curiosity. Elara explained carefully, choosing her words like stepping on glass. Her father had once been part of something powerful, something dangerous, before disappearing without a trace. The signal she used wasn't just a memory, it was a warning, a message only a few would understand. Silence followed, heavy and tense. Instead of anger, the man gave a small, thoughtful nod. "Then you're not just a waitress." From that moment on, Elara wasn't treated like an outsider. She was watched, tested, and quietly pulled into a world she had only glimpsed from the edges. Every glance, every whisper, every decision around her carried weight. And she realized quickly, knowing the past didn't just give her answers. It made her a target. Days turned into a tense routine inside the estate, where every hallway seemed to carry secrets. Elara quickly realized that nothing in this world was ever said directly. Conversations were layered, looks held meaning, and silence often spoke the loudest. She stayed observant, careful not to overstep, yet sharp enough to notice what others missed. The man who brought her here, now someone she understood to be far more powerful than rumors suggested, kept her close, but never fully trusted. Instead, he tested her. Small things at first. Remembering faces, catching inconsistencies in stories, noticing who avoided eye contact during meetings. Elara passed each test, not by force, but by instinct. But the deeper she went, the more dangerous the truth became. One evening, while serving drinks during a private gathering, she noticed something off. 2 men exchanged a glance, too quick, too rehearsed. Later, she overheard fragments of a conversation, words like shipment and change of leadership, slipping through the cracks. It didn't take long for her to piece it together. Someone inside the organization was planning something big, and betrayal was at the center of it. Elara faced a choice she couldn't avoid. Stay silent and remain safe for now, or speak up and risk everything. She chose either, at least not directly. Instead, she played a careful game, dropping subtle hints, guiding attention without revealing her source, and watching how people reacted. It was a dangerous balance, but it worked. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving in this world. She was starting to influence it. Tension finally snapped without warning. What had been whispers and glances turned into chaos overnight. The estate, once controlled and silent, erupted with alarms, footsteps, and shouted orders echoing through the halls. Elara woke to the sound of gunfire in the distance, sharp, sudden, and terrifyingly close. She didn't panic. Not anymore. Moving quickly, she followed the noise instead of running from it. By the time she reached the main corridor, guards were already scrambling, unsure who to trust. That was the real danger. No one knew where the betrayal had begun. Faces that once felt familiar now looked like threats. Then she saw him, the boss, standing firm despite the storm around him. But something was wrong. The men at his side hesitated just a second too long before reacting to an attack. That hesitation told Elara everything. "The traitor is close," she said quietly, stepping forward. Her voice cut through the confusion. She pointed, not dramatically, but with certainty, toward one of the inner circle. A man who had been too calm, too prepared. For a split second, their eyes met, and that was enough. The truth was exposed. What followed was fast and brutal. The betrayal turned violent, and the man didn't go down alone. In the exchange, the boss was hit, staggering, but still standing. The room fell into a stunned silence once it was over. Power had shifted. Trust had shattered. And as Elara looked around at the broken order of the Empire, she understood something clearly. This wasn't the end of the conflict. It was only the beginning of something far bigger. The days after the attack felt heavier than the chaos itself. Silence returned to the estate, but it was no longer controlled. It was uncertain, fragile. The boss survived, but his injury weakened more than just his body. It weakened the structure that held everything together. Orders were questioned, loyalties wavered, and for the first time, doubts spread openly through the ranks. Elara saw it clearly. Power wasn't just about strength, it was about perception. And right now, the organization looked vulnerable. She didn't wait for permission. Stepping into spaces she once only observed, Elara began making decisions. Small at first, reassigning guards, tightening communication, separating those whose loyalty felt uncertain. Some resisted her authority, dismissing her as an outsider who had risen too quickly. But she didn't argue. She acted. When one group openly challenged her, she handled it swiftly and without hesitation. Not with unnecessary violence, but with precision. She exposed their hidden dealings, cut off their resources, and left them with no choice but to submit or disappear. The message spread fast. This wasn't the same quiet waitress anymore. Meanwhile, she visited the boss, who remained under heavy watch. Their conversations were brief but meaningful. He didn't give direct approval, but he didn't stop her either. That silence became its own kind of permission. Elara began to rebuild what had been broken, piece by piece. New alliances formed, old weaknesses were removed, and control slowly returned. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about holding power together. It was about becoming the one who truly controlled it. Years passed, and the empire that once stood on the edge of collapse now moved with quiet precision under Elara's control. The chaos of that night had been replaced with order, clean, calculated, and unshakable. Her name carried weight in rooms she had never imagined entering, and her presence alone was enough to silence doubt. But power had a long memory, and the past never truly disappeared. It returned without warning. A message arrived, no name, no signature. Just a pattern. A familiar one. The same silent signal she had used years ago in the diner. Elara felt it immediately. This wasn't coincidence. It was a challenge. Following the trail, she uncovered something buried deeper than any betrayal she had faced before. Her father hadn't simply been part of the organization, he had been connected to a hidden network, one that operated beyond the visible structure of power. The signal wasn't just an emergency code. It was a key, passed down through those who understood its meaning. And now, someone else was using it. The confrontation was inevitable. When it finally came, it wasn't loud or chaotic, it was controlled, deliberate. Across from her stood a figure who knew the same language of silence, someone who understood every move before it happened. But Elara had something they didn't. She understood what the signal had become. In one final moment, she used it again, not as a warning, but as a decision. A choice to end the cycle of hidden control and unspoken power. And just like that, everything changed again.